Trish, you are president of the ABA, inaugurated in 2020, and what a year to be inaugurated. But before we dive in, I just wanted to ask a little bit about, how you got where you are today, and how did you get into law in the first place?
Well, I went off to college thinking that I was going to be a journalist and that I would grow up and be, I don't know, editor of the Washington Post or something. And I had a terrific professor as an undergrad who introduced me to law and decided for me in a way that I ought to be going to law school. So that was actually what persuaded me to go the law route instead of journalism, and I've never looked back.
Well, that's great. And so you were a partner at Jennifer and Block for 5 years, and now you've been with Snell and Wilmer since 1996, where you handle some of the most complex cases there are around commercial litigation, professional malpractice defense, financial institutions litigation. What drew you to practice these types of the law? Was it the big cases? Was it, what drew you to this area?
Yeah, I've sort of always been a big law girl, for better or worse. And I certainly love the big cases. I love the challenges and the intellectual parts of practicing in complex commercial litigation. But, some of it, to be honest, is just sort of, if that's where you start, there's a degree of inertia that keeps you in one place. And that's not to say I don't love what I do. It's just, I think often we stay with what we learned and what we know how to do.
And that reminds me of like the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours to become an expert. So you find that you get this expertise there, and I don't blame you for staying there and just continuing to get more refined in your skills. So now
I had the chance yesterday to actually argue an appeal. I haven't been a real lawyer for a couple of months because the ABA has been taking up pretty much all of my time. But I had an appeal to argue yesterday, which was great fun, and it was actually a terrific opportunity to be a lawyer for a little bit.
Absolutely. So let's jump right into the ABA, the American Bar Association. You've just become the 10th female president in the ABA's history, so congratulations. But, what was it like stepping into the role in such a crazy year such as 2020?
Well, it is a crazy year, and I just decided from the get-go that the only way to approach it was to say we're going to make it great. It's not going to be anything like what we thought it was going to be, but we're going to make it great. And I have tried to keep that mindset. And as it turns out, there really is some lemonade that we're making out of the lemons that we've been given this year. The flip side of that, Chris, is that actually I truly believe that the American Bar Association has never been more important. The voice of the rule of law, the voice of lawyers in a moment like this is deeply important to our nation and beyond, really. So it is, on the one hand, kind of a weird year, but on the other hand, kind of a wonderful year to be serving as president of the ABA.
I couldn't agree more. And I got to say that this year there's just been an acceleration of things, particularly on the technology side. And I wanted to kind of jump in there. Now we've got hearings happening on Zoom, and the ABA is putting out thousands of webinars. So can you tell me a little bit more about technology and how it's making an impact for the ABA?
Well, I mean, if we didn't have the technology, who knows what any of us would be able to do to earn a livelihood, for Pete's sake, right? We all had to go virtual almost overnight. My law firm did, in multiple offices around the United States, and certainly lots of other folks and lots of other places had to do the same. At the ABA, all of our staff has been working remotely since March, with no particular sign that our staff will be coming back anytime soon. So when you call the ABA Service Center, for example, with a question about some product that you tried to order, it gets answered by somebody from their home, because we don't have an actual service center anymore. So one of the things that we've learned, Chris, is that there is a real yearning, I think, for lawyers out there to have remote participation in what we're doing. We've done everything virtual since about March, and our numbers are up. We're getting more attendance at our meetings. We're getting more attendance at our CLE programs. Lawyers who couldn't participate in what we were doing before, or who chose not to because it involved travel or too much time or fill in the blank, are now able to. And that's a positive that we were a little bit, I guess, surprised by. And one of the interesting things for us that lies ahead is figuring out how to, when we do start coming out of this pandemic, how to service the people like me who want to be in the room where it happened because we want to be with people and do the in-person network, how to satisfy me and satisfy our other members who'd rather just sit in their office and participate remotely.
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely a challenge, because you're going to have those individuals that just want to be in the home office, like I'm in myself. And have you started to get pressure maybe from the education side for, like, online law degrees? And I know myself, I own a legal marketing company, and I actually emailed the ABA and I was like, hey, are there any accredited online schools to get my law degree? Has there been any talk about that because of what the success, how successful the Zoom hearings and technology's been in the legal area?
Right. So the folks in the ABA who work on the accreditation of law schools and the standards that apply to ABA accredited law schools are an independent group, and so they don't kind of like report up to me because it's important that they be independent and make decisions based first on their expertise, which the rest of the ABA doesn't have, but also make sure that their decisions are independent. So they will make those decisions going forward. There is not presently an accredited online law school, but certainly lots of law schools have had to adjust their teaching, right? And are teaching in, if not hybrid, in virtual format, because they have to for right now. What we're going to need to figure out is, what do we learn from that? In this country, and frankly in most places in the Western world anyway, the law degree has always been something that in our heads required you to go for 3 years here to a brick and mortar facility, to be physically present with other budding law students, to be taught by in-person law professors. It's going to be interesting to see how that model gets stretched as a consequence of the experiences that we're going to come out of this pandemic having had. I mean, one of the things that I think is so profound about this moment is that the change in the legal profession has been accelerated really beyond belief. I mean, I don't know, what has it been, like about a decade of change that we've squished into the last 8 months?
Absolutely.
And on some level, we got to catch our breath a little bit. But on another level, it's a really exciting time to watch what's happening in the legal profession, whether it's legal education, whether it's courtrooms, whether it's law firms, or what.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The Zoom hearings, the remote work, and just everything has been accelerated so much, and it's been a necessity, to have that access via technology when we're in a situation like we're in. And even in Arizona, and I didn't plan on going deep into this, but like Arizona now has where you can own a law firm, but you have to have a compliance officer, and you have the para lawyer, and there's some terms that I am not 100% familiar with, but that's even been incredible in that change too.
Well, no question, the experimentation that's going on around the regulation of law and the practice of law is pretty interesting stuff. And for reasons that I don't fully understand, except maybe that Westerners are just more contrarian. It's a lot of it is happening in the West, or at least a lot of the initial steps forward to actually do something are happening in our Western states, my own state, Arizona, being one of them. And one of the things that is deeply important, both to me personally and to the ABA, is to make sure that we study these experiments and have actual results that we can talk about. So our Center for Innovation at the ABA, for example, is gathering together court leaders and academics who study courts to talk about what are we going to measure in all of these states that are trying these different approaches. Because if we measure the output of apples in Utah because of the changes they're making, and we measure the output of oranges in Arizona because of the changes that we're making, we're not going to be able to compare them together to come up with anything that says which ones kind of worked and which ones really didn't. So one of the things that the ABA can do is convene the folks to have those conversations, and I think that's a really important next step.
I couldn't agree more. You have to have those measurables, otherwise it's just opinions, and to have something to compare against. So yeah, I think that's incredibly important. We'll see what happens, and it's been a crazy year with the technology changes and the changes in law. And I kind of wanted to jump over. This year is the 100th year anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the women's right to vote. And it's also the year that the great RBG passed. RBG, who of course progressed both women's rights, but also the perception of female lawyers. As the 10th female president of the ABA, what does the legal landscape look like for female attorneys right now?
One of the things that I bring to that question is almost, not quite, but almost 40 years in the practice. And when you've been in the practice a long time, especially for this set of years, I've seen a ton of change and a ton of improvement and a lot of advancement for women in the legal profession. I mean, on the first day that I showed up at law school, and there'd never been a woman on the United States Supreme Court. On the first day that I showed up at law school, there'd never been a woman president of the ABA. My law school at the time had exactly 2 women faculty, right? Well, none of those things is true anymore. So you can see with clarity that we've made great progress in a number of respects. At the same time, we still have enormous work to do. In big law, the numbers remain sort of sad. Not enough women partners, not enough women equity partners, not enough women managing partners, and on and on. It gets a little better in other sorts of practice settings, but not wildly better. And we need still to come to grips with what we need to do as a profession to make ourselves more hospitable to women practitioners. And again, we're better than it was, but there's still much to be done. It is, on the ABA side, it is my fervent hope that I am the last person who has a number attached to her when she's talked about as an ABA president. I am the 10th, and I'm actually kind of excited to be the 10th. And my hope is that whoever is the 11th, we won't be counting anymore, right? That we'll sort of just be done with it. And one of the great joys, Chris, for me on my ABA journey is that all of the 9 women who came before me are my friends, have been my mentors. Every single one of them is there for me and has always been there for me and has helped to uplift me and get me to this place where I am. So I can be sad that there have been only 10, but I have this amazing cadre of women presidents who I have learned so much from, and that's pretty cool, actually.
I think that's incredible. And I love that. That's very moving and powerful. And, normally during the next part of our interview, we talk about marketing and actionable advice from a marketing standpoint. But, you know, what I'd like to talk about a little bit more is we've all had huge personal and business challenges this year, and it'd be great to hear your advice for attorneys that are listening. You know, what do U.S. attorneys need to double down on right now when it comes to their business?
Well, I think one of the things we have to be focused on, frankly, is being intentional about our relationships. Gone are the days when we are passing people in the hallway and catching up because we stop for a minute and say, how you doing, for 45 seconds and then move on. Gone are the days when we can meet with lawyers who are referral sources or potential clients in person. So we have to be intentional about building our relationships in a virtual world. And that means focusing on following up with your clients, following up with your referral sources, trying to be as present as we can in a world in which we actually can't be present. But being intentional about it, really, if you think about it, one of the things that is powerful to me that we have all lost is the unintentional, unplanned contact with other people. Whether it is the networking that we do at an ABA meeting, or the communications with our colleagues in our law office, or seeing people in the courthouse and bumping into colleagues and getting caught up with what they're doing, that is by and large gone. And that means we have to replace it with something that is an intentional, right, connection. Which is harder. I mean, anymore, you can't just call somebody, or at least I find it's really hard to just call somebody. You got to send an email, right, to figure out a time that's convenient for people to get on a Zoom call. It's just everything's a little bit more complicated, but that's okay. We're getting there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I like what you said about being intentional, because I know every attorney business owner loves referrals. They bring with them trust, and that's where you get a lot of those great leads. But you have to be intentional to build those relationships, to have those opportunities, whether it's through education or just being a good person and giving, and without even any thought of reciprocity. And I think that really adds up. The other thing that you mentioned that I think is really true is, we're talking on Zoom, and I can kind of read your body language and see when you smile and hear the tone in your voice. But a lot of times we're jumping over to Slack or to email, and you just miss those emotional intelligence type, empathy type signals through inflection, just emphasizing maybe a word differently, where it's kind of lost through technology versus in person.
Absolutely. I just read a piece the other day that I thought was really interesting about how much more energy it takes to be on Zoom versus to actually be in a room with the same number of people. The author was arguing that if you're looking at the Brady Bunch or Hollywood Squares, depending on how old you are, crowd of people on Zoom, it's actually really hard to sort of do the checking that you need to do to try and figure out who's paying attention and who's not, and who's listening and who's got a sour face, and all of those things. And so it can be actually just personally exhausting to do it this way versus doing it in person.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And when there's a black screen, or people are bouncing in and out at different times, and it kind of has that interruption effect. So let's kind of jumping over on more on the personal side. Many of the elite attorneys and entrepreneurs that I speak with talk about the importance of maintaining a good work-life balance. And I know it's just so crazy. You're so busy right now, but what's something you do to kind of balance that work and life that you've got going on?
Well, in a way, it's easier right now because my walk to work is, 30, 45 seconds from one part of the house to the other. So that helps. One of the things that's always been important to me is the family dinner. And that's been true throughout my motherhood and career. It was really important in the home I grew up in. And I guess my mom did a good job of instilling it in me. And so in my home, we spend energy to make sure that we have that meal together at the end of the day that brings the family together and talks about, how was your day? How was your day? And, maybe it's only a half an hour, but it's a discipline that has helped us as a family and certainly helped me as a human to keep some of that balance. It is, on the other hand, harder to keep the balance when it's all happening inside your house. And I think everybody's experiencing some of that. That sure, it's easier because you don't have to drive downtown and the commute is short, etc. But on the other hand, there are no boundaries anymore unless we create them for ourselves. When your computer is sitting at your kitchen table, the risk to spend all of your time doing work versus doing the other things that help to make us rounded and grounded and sane people is sometimes too high. So we gotta be careful about that. We all need to be careful that we're taking care not only of ourselves but of our colleagues. Lawyer wellness is a serious issue on a good day, and these aren't good days for some people. And so making sure that we're alert to the needs of our friends, the needs of our colleagues, the needs of others in the legal profession who may be experiencing anxiety or depression or any sort of addictive behavior is really important. And there are lots of resources around lawyer wellness in particular on the ABA website that I think are quite good.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. And I like the family dinner aspect. And I was kind of asking on a personal level. I feel when I'm on the same level of my house, because, our master bedroom's on the same level as my office, I feel I need to go downstairs after work. And it's like I'm off work, right? When I go downstairs, the brain just kind of shifts to a different thought process. And
Absolutely. I do the same thing. I mean, I've got a room that I commandeered from everybody else in the house that's now become my office. Because years ago when we built our house, my husband got an office and I got a kitchen. And that's a joke in our family. It's a great kitchen, but I'm not going to work in my kitchen, right?
Right.
So, but like you, I have a room that's kind of a dedicated space, and I don't go in it unless I'm working anymore. And when I leave it and go into other rooms, then it's okay, I'm not working anymore time.
Right. Yeah. And on a personal level, so outside the sphere of law, what other great passions do you have in your life?
Honestly, my greatest passion is my family. I have a great family, 2 big brothers, lots of nieces and nephews to whom I'm very close. And our parents are both gone, and so my brothers and I are kind of filling the void of the grandparents who left us much too soon. So I spend a lot of time hanging out with, virtually or live when we used to be able to, with my family. I love to cook. I love to read. And lately I have been taking lots of walks because here in Phoenix, it just got, in the last month or so, back to nice weather. While everyone else is worrying this time of year about the weather being awful and getting cold, we are celebrating the end of summer where we can emerge from our homes again and be outside.
Nice. That's great. And Trish, as we end, we have this final segment. It's our 3 for 3. It's just 3 questions, kind of a rapid fire, 3 in 3 minutes. And I'm just going to jump right in. Normally we ask about SEO, but I'm going to say, what's your number 1 marketing tip for attorneys?
Don't be afraid of making a cold call. If you have a connection that you can use to get to somebody. One of my dearest clients was a cold call because I figured out that we'd gone to the same undergraduate program and had been part of the same little program I used that to just kind of chase him down, and it worked.
I like it, that intentional part. And which entrepreneur do you admire the most?
That's a really good question. I think the entrepreneurs right now I admire the most are the ones who are reinventing their businesses to thrive in a COVID environment, right? The restaurants who've had to completely redo what they did before to be in a virtual environment. The cocktail shipping companies that I'm not sure existed before we got into this mess, who now will ship cocktails to your friends if you want to have a party. Those are the entrepreneurs I think I admire right now.
The innovators. I like it. I like it. And then final question here, big broad question. What's next on your bucket list?
Next on my bucket list is getting back to a place where I can travel. I got to be the first ABA president since the Wright brothers invented the airplane who has gone even this long without being on an airplane, right? I was expecting 300 nights this year to be sleeping in a hotel room. Not so fast. So someplace, wonderful and warm when this is all behind us.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think it's the same for me. And Trish, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Chris. It was great to be with you.